Her male best friend mocked me at dinner. She could do way better than you. I shut him down in front of everyone. She snapped, apologize or we're over. I smiled. I didn't say a word, but when she came home weeks later, she finally learned what done really means. For 3 years, my life with Anna was good. Great. Even I'm a lawyer, so my day job is basically wading through the worst parts of human nature. Coming home to her was like taking a breath of fresh air. She was a paralegal, smart as a whip, and had this fire in her to go to law school and make a name for herself. I loved that about her. We were a team building a life in a house I'd spent years restoring. It felt solid, real. I wasn't just paying bills for a girlfriend. I was investing in the woman I was going to marry. But there was always this static, a low-level hum of something not being quite right. And that static had a name: Leo. Leo was her best friend from college. He was a graphic designer, one of those guys who calls himself an artist and acts like working a 9-to-5 is a fate worse than death. Meanwhile, he was designing menus for taco joints to barely make his rent. To hear Anna tell it, he was her ride or die, her platonic soulmate, the guy who protected her. To me, he was a leech with a superiority complex, and he had made it his life's mission to undermine our relationship. He was a pro at it. I'll give him that. He never did anything you could call him out on directly. It was all subtle digs, little poisoned darts disguised as compliments. Her ex-boyfriend, Alex, a musician who'd broken her heart, was his favorite topic. If I took Anna on a nice vacation to Mexico, Leo would find a way to bring up some spontaneous camping trip he and Anna took once. "Remember that, Anna," he'd say, all wistful. "You can't plan moments like that. You just have to be with someone who gets your free spirit." The message was always the same. I was the boring, safe choice, and he was the gatekeeper to the exciting life she was leaving behind. And Anna, she ate it up with a spoon. She was completely snowed by his protective friend act. Anytime I'd even hint that he was out of line, she'd get defensive. "He's just being Leo. He was there for me when Alex shattered my heart. He's just worried about me. He's family, Jack. I'm a patient guy. You have to be in my line of work. You don't jump on the first piece of evidence. You wait. You let the other side talk. You let them build their own case against themselves, and you wait for them to hand you the rope." I waited for Leo to hand me the rope. The moment came a month ago. I just won the biggest case of my career. 6 months of my life gone. Countless sleepless nights, weekends spent buried in paperwork. But we won, and it was a huge deal for my firm and for me. To celebrate, I threw a dinner party. My closest friends, the ones who'd barely seen me for half a year, were all there. And because I was still trying to be the good guy, I told Anna to invite her friends, which of course meant Leo was coming. The night was perfect. The house was full of good people. The expensive wine I'd been saving was open, and I was actually relaxing for the first time in what felt like forever. Leo, naturally, was soaking up the free booze and acting like he co-owned the place. He got a few drinks in him and decided it was time for a performance. He started on some long, boring tangent about an art exhibit, which was really just an excuse, to talk about the difference between creators and suits. "It's just a different way of seeing the world," he said, looking right at me. "Some of us are driven by passion, by art. Others are more practical." He took a long, slow sip of my wine. My friends knew his game and were shooting him looks that could curdle milk. I just gave him a tight smile and refused to engage, but he wasn't done. He turned to Anna, putting on his best concerned friend face. "I just hope you're happy, Anna," he said, his voice dripping with fake sincerity. "I mean, Jack's a great guy. He's stable. He's a provider. He's reliable." He said reliable like it was a dirty word. Then he paused, looked me dead in the eye, and let a smug little smirk spread across his face. "But you've got to admit, she could do way better than you." And there it was, the rope. The whole table went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. My friends looked like they were about to physically restrain themselves from launching across the table. Anna just stared at her plate, blushing. She wasn't mad at him. She was just embarrassed that he'd made a scene. That was the moment the focus snapped into place for me. The picture became crystal clear. The patient lawyer was gone. The man who had just been fundamentally disrespected in his own home in front of his friends by a man who was living off his generosity was now running the show. I put my fork and knife down very slowly. I folded my hands on the table and fixed my eyes on Leo. The friendly host had left the building. The prosecutor had just taken his place at the podium. "That's a bold claim, Leo," I said. My voice was dangerously quiet. "I'm interested in your reasoning. In your expert opinion, what does a better man for Anna look like? Please be specific. Lay out the criteria for me." Leo was completely thrown. He was geared up for a shouting match. He wasn't prepared for a calm, methodical cross-examination. Well, he stammered. "Someone more on her level. A creative. Someone who gets her." "I see," I said, nodding. "So, the main qualification is being a creative. An interesting theory, and I assume you see yourself as fitting this description." "I think I understand her better than anyone," he said, puffing out his chest. "Perfect," I said. "So, you're the gold standard. Let's examine that. Let's add a few other factors to this analysis. Let's talk about something more concrete than vibes. Let's talk about investment. As everyone here knows, Anna is in her second year of law school. It's a top-tier program with a price tag to match. I'm paying for that, the whole thing. It's a major investment of capital, of course, but it's also an investment of faith. Faith in her and faith in our future together. So, my question for you, Leo, as the self-appointed gold standard of what's better for Anna, is this. What have you invested in her future lately other than your consistently negative opinions of me?" Leo's face went white. Anna shot me a panicked look. "Jack, don't do this," she whispered. I held up a hand to silence her, my eyes still locked on Leo. "I'm not done. Let's talk about the car she drives. It's safe, it's reliable, it gets her to school and back. I bought it for her. Now, you have a car too, right, Leo? A cool little convertible that seems to break down a lot. In fact, Anna has had to loan you money for repairs at least 3 times in the last 6 months, hasn't she? Money that she took from the household account that, by the way, I'm the only one who deposits into. So, in a very real sense, Leo, I'm not just investing in Anna's future. I'm also paying to keep your little hipster mobile on the road. You're welcome." One of my buddies at the table actually snorted with laughter before covering it with a cough. Leo looked like he'd been slapped. "And finally," I said, leaning forward, my voice dropping, "let's talk about this house. The roof over her head. I own it. I pay the mortgage. I fix the things that break. You, on the other hand, have been late on your rent so many times that Anna has had to cover for you again with money that I earned. So, let me just summarize your argument."
The signs he ignored, the subtle shifts began, almost imperceptibly, like the slow, creeping tide that erodes a coastline. At first, Ethan dismissed them as the natural ebb and flow of any long-term relationship. Or perhaps the added stress of Rachel's demanding marketing career. She became emotionally distant, her once effusive affection replaced by a polite, almost attached cordiality. Her kisses grew shorter, her hugs less lingering, as if an invisible barrier had slowly erected itself between them. The easy banter that had once filled their home was replaced by a quiet tension, a palpable sense of unease that settled in the air like dust when he tried to bridge the gap to ask what was wrong. She'd offer vague excuses, just I at Ethan, or a lot on my plate at work. Her eyes, once so open and expressive, now seemed veiled, guarded, as if shielding a secret world he was no longer privy to. Then came the phone. It became an extension of her, clutched possessively, its screen often angled away from his view. The incessant ping of notifications, the quick, almost furtive glances she'd cast at it, the way she'd excuse herself to take calls in another room, these were not the actions of the open, transparent woman he had married. He'd catch her whispering into the phone, her voice hushed, her demeanor secretive. When he'd ask who she was talking to, she'd offer a dismissive, just a friend or work stuff, her tone bordering on irritation. He tried to engage her, to ask about her day, to share anecdotes from his own. But her attention was fragmented, her responses are monosyllabic, her eyes constantly darting back to the glowing rectangle in her hand. On evening, as they sat on the couch, a rare moment of quiet, he reached for her hand, and she flinched, pulling away as if burned. "What's wrong, Rachel?" he'd asked, his voice last with a concern he could no longer hide. She'd mumbled something about being tired, about a headache, but her eyes, usually so expressive, were veiled, distant. The intimacy that had once flowed so effortlessly between them had become a strained, awkward dance. Her accusations of him being too controlling were a new and particularly painful development. Ethan, who prided himself on being supportive and understanding, was blind. "Why are you always questioning me, Ethan?" she'd snap, her voice sharp with an unfamiliar edge. "Can't I have my own life? My own friends?" He'd try to explain, to reassure her that his concern stemmed from love, not control, but his words seemed to fall on deaf ears. The arguments grew more frequent, more heated, each one leaving a fresh wound in the fabric of their marriage. He felt like he was walking on eggshells, constantly afraid of saying or doing the wrong thing, constantly trying to decipher the shifting landscape of her moods. The woman he loved was becoming a stranger, and the distance between them grew wider with each passing day. The late nights out became a regular occurrence, accompanied by vague explanations of work events or girls' nights out with her friend Lily. Ethan knew Lily, a colleague with Rachel's, but they weren't particularly close. He found it odd that Rachel was suddenly spending so much time with her, especially given Lily's reputation for being a bit of a party animal. He tried to be understanding, to give her space, to offer comfort. He'd bring her flowers, cook her favorite meals, suggest weekend getaways. But his gestures were met with a polite, almost detached gratitude. The warmth, the spark, the deep connection that had defined their marriage seemed to be fading, replaced by an unsettling void. His gut, the same gut that had guided him through countless life or death situations, an ER nurse, began to churn with an insistent unease. It whispered warnings, painted unsettling scenarios, but his love, a love so profound it bordered on blind devotion, refused her. Listen. He wanted to believe her, needed to believe her. The alternative was too painful to contemplate. He was a man who fixed things, and he was determined to fix this, whatever this was. He just didn't know yet that the problem wasn't a broken car, but a broken trust, and that the repairs would be far more devastating than he could ever imagine. His best friend, Chris, a man he had known since childhood, a man he trusted implicitly, was the first to voice the unspoken. They were at their usual pub, nursing beers, when Chris, his brow furrowed with concern, leaned in. "Ethan, I need to tell you something. He saw Rachel the other day." Ethan's heart gave a hopeful lurch. Maybe she'd been out with Chris's wife. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. "Oh yeah, where?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Chris took a long swig of his beer, his gaze steady. She was at the new coffee shop downtown, the one with the outdoor seating, and she wasn't alone. She was with a guy. They were close, too close for just friends. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Ethan felt a cold dread spread through him, but his immediate reaction was denial, a fierce, protective instinct to shield Rachel from any accusation. "Chris, come in. Rachel has new friends. She's been stressed with work, with the IVF. You're jumping to conclusions." Chris sighed, his eyes filled with a weary understanding. "Look, man, I hope I'm wrong. But I've seen this before. Just be careful. Keep your eyes open." Unbeknownst to Ethan, the man Chris had seen Rachel with was, in fact, Chris himself. Their betrayal was already a festering wound, hidden beneath layers of deceit and false camaraderie. Chris, the trusted confidant, was the serpent in their garden, poisoning their perfect life from within. And Ethan, blinded by love and loyalty, was walking straight into the trap. The signs were there, subtle at first, then glaring, but his love, his desire to believe in the perfect life, had blinded him. He had been so focused on fixing things, on being the hero, that he had failed to see the rot beneath the surface. The betrayal had been a brutalison, but it had also been a catalyst for profound personal growth. He was stronger, wiser, more attuned to the complexities of human nature, both good and bad. He was about to target a full dose of the hardest medicine, and it would change everything.